Hey, Sunshine, how are you? Hey, Queen, how are you? Welcome in. Thank you. Hey, Eddie, how we doing, brother? Hey, Deborah, how are you doing? Welcome back. Well, Sunshine, I try to be good at storytelling. I am apparently not good, however, at calculating how long a book will take to read. Hey, Jasmine, how are you? Oh, yeah, I'm like surprised that I get through the nonsense words as easy as I do. Happy Monday, Wings. Good to see you back. Yeah, I was thinking to myself, I can get this done in 2 nights, like all the other Roald Dahl books we've read. Nope. Nope, this one's gonna be a 3-nighter. I am doing well, Amy. How are you? Well, I am considering a couple of options. One is to continue the book on Wednesday, which is my normal go live day. And there's also the option of finishing it on Sunday of next week. So, I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. And Michelle, that's wonderful. Congratulations. Well, I will probably do it Wednesday. I don't know if I can convince myself to go live tomorrow night. I'm not quite sure because I have usually hang out with my best friend on Tuesday nights. So, hey, Christy, how are you? Welcome. Absolutely, Miss Shelby. When the wee one gets here, you got to bring them to listen to some stories. Hey, Marcy. Hey, CZ, how are you? I hope we all had a good start to the week. Hi, Priestess Fitness. I haven't seen you in forever. Hey, Joe Costa, welcome. Well, how are you? I was actually, not too long ago, I was actually just wondering about you. If I have not yet, no grandchildren for me yet. Hey, Jules, welcome in. Nope. I have my oldest daughter has no interest in dating. She's 21 and moving to Florida. Wow. Well, I hope that goes well. Yeah, life has definitely been crazy for me as well. But I am glad you're doing good. I know you were one of my first mutuals on here. That's wild. Yeah, if either of my kids are going to have kids, it would probably be my youngest. Well, I mean, I will have an archive of these out on YouTube. So, wait, said a dirty word. I can't say the tubes. Hey, Lynn, how are you? Welcome in. Hey, Timothy. Angela, how are you? Yeah, it's interesting because I'm actually going to be posting some more public domain audiobooks on my Tubes channel, and that'll be fun. And so that's going to be one way, and then I've got some other stuff that I'll be posting, and the lives will be archived. And yes, we love the TikTok shop. Hey, Crazy Mama, welcome in. Welcome in. I'll give it a couple more minutes here and then we'll get started. So I was just saying I had a little bit of a miscalculation. I'm so used to the Roald Dahl books that we've been, hey, Carrie, how are you? That we've been reading. It only take 2 nights to get through. I made a bad assumption with this one. This one is a 3-nighter. So I've got it all figured out, but I will probably finish this one on Wednesday so as not to make y'all, wait until Sunday. Oh, Christy, it is a wonderful book. It's a wonderful book. Of course, I haven't figured out what we're going to be reading next weekend, but not quite sure yet. Hey, Tina. Hey, Danielle. How are you? Yeah, listening and watching a scary movie. Oh, I can't do double time. We'd be up until all hours of the night. No root beer today. I'm working the Mountain Dew. I will say yesterday, for those of you that know my obsession with Ghost energy drinks, I finally tried their new 7-Up flavor, and I gotta be honest with you, it's pretty damn good. Oh, thank you, Suze. I am grateful that you came back. Arcan Homestead, welcome, and greetings from Quebec. Interesting fun fact about my family. My great grandmother's. The Welch's is great. They have 2 Welch's flavors. They've got grape and they've got grape cran. So my great grandmother's maiden name is Lalonde, and so I was doing some family history research, and it come to find out my ninth great grandfather was that family was one of the first families to settle in what is now modern-day Montreal. And they came from Normandy, and they settled near what is now Montreal, and they actually moved across southern Canada and then down into North Dakota, Minnesota, and then North Dakota. So I have deep, deep ties to Canada. Yeah, that's about that time period is about when they came over, and there is actually a monument to the Lalonde family in that area, which I think is cool. I've got to get up there to see it. Uh-oh. There are a ton of Lalondes in Canada, like all over the place. It's crazy. I almost want a pirate in my family tree. Oh, yeah. So, well, it is time to get started. Thank you guys for all the likes and shares and reposts. Those definitely help get my live in front of more faces and in more ear holes. So I appreciate that very much. To people that are new here, thank you for joining us. I hope you stick around and enjoy the story. So tonight we're doing part 2 of the BFG. And as I was saying earlier, if you weren't here, I miscalculated on how long the BFG would take to read. So it's actually going to be a 3-nighter instead of a 2-nighter. And I will probably be finishing it on Wednesday, as I normally go live Sunday, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So we can definitely sub in Wednesday and make it a family-friendly night, which it is not normally. It's normally for horror stories and all kinds of fun stuff. Alrighty then. There we go. All right. Oh, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with UndeadPapa. Tonight we get back to our adventure with Sophie and the BFG. They have just returned from their dream-catching trip, and now they're deciding what to do with the nightmare that they found. So wherever you're listening from, dim the lights, sit back, and relax, because Storytime is about to begin. This is The BFG by Roald Dahl. A Trogglehumper for the Flesh Lump Eater.
There's always having 50 winks before they go scumpering off to hunt human beings in the evening, the BFG said.
He stopped for a few moments to let Sophie have a better look.
Giants is only sleeping every then and now, he said. Not nearly as much as human beings. Human beings is crazy for sleeping. Is it ever occurring to you that a human being who is 50 is spending about 20 years sleeping fast?
I must admit that never occurred to me, Sophie said.
You should allow it to occur to you, the BFG said. Imagine it, please. This human being who says he's 50 has been fast asleep for 20 years, and is not even knowing where he is, not even doing anything, not even thinking.
It's a funny thought, Sophie said.
Exactly, the BFG said. So what I is trying to explain to you is that a human being who says he's 50 is not 50, he's only 30.
What about me? Sophie said. I'm 8.
You is not 8 at all, the BFG said. Human being babies and little childers is spending half their time sleeping, so you is only 4.
I'm 8, Sophie said.
You may think you is 8, the BFG said, but you has only spent 4 years of your life with your little eyes open. You is only 4, and please stop higgling me. Titchy little snapper whippers like you should not be higgling around with an old sage and onions who is hundreds of years more than you.
How much do giants sleep? Sophie asked.
They is never wasting much time snuzzling, the BFG said. 2 or 3 hours is enough.
When do you sleep? Sophie asked.
Even less, the BFG answered. I is sleeping only once in the Blue Baboon.
Sophie, peeping out from her pocket, examined the 9 sleeping giants. They looked even more grotesque now than when they were awake, sprawled out across the yellow plain. They covered an area about the size of a football field. Most of them were lying on their backs with their enormous mouths wide open, and they were snoring like foghorns. The noise was awful. Suddenly, the BFG gave a jump in the air.
By gum frog, he cried. I was just having the most wopsy whiffling idea.
What? Sophie said.
Wait, he cried. Hold your horse feathers. Keep your skirt on. Just you wait to see what I is going to bring about.
He galloped off fast to his cave with Sophie hanging on tight to the rim of the pocket. He rolled back the stone. He entered the cave. He was very excited. He was moving quickly.
You stay where you is in my pocket, Huggy Bee, he said. We is doing this lovely bit of buck-swashing both together.
He laid aside the dream-catching net, but hung on to the suitcase. He ran across to the other side of the cave and grabbed the long trumpet thing, the one he had been carrying when Sophie had first seen him in the village. With the suitcase in one hand and the trumpet in the other, he dashed out of the cave. What is he up to now? Sophie wondered.
Peep your head up good, the BFG said. Then you will get a fine wrinkle of what is going on.
When the BFG came near to the sleeping giants, he slowed his pace. He began moving softly. He crept on his toes toward the ugly brutes. They were still snoring loudly. They looked repulsive, filthy, diabolical. The BFG tiptoed around them. He went past the gizzard gulper, the blood bottler, the meat dripper, the child chewer. Then he stopped. He had reached the flesh lump eater. He pointed at him. Then he looked down at Sophie and gave her a big wink. He knelt on the ground and very quietly he opened the suitcase. He took out of it the glass jar containing the terrible, nightmarish Trogglehumper. At that point, Sophie guessed what was going to happen next. Ouch, she thought. This could be rather dangerous. She crouched lower in the pocket so that only the top of her head and her eyes were showing. She wanted to be ready to duck out of sight very fast should anything go wrong. They were about 10 feet away from the flesh lumper's face. The snoring, snorting noise he was making was disgusting. Every now and again a big bubble of spit formed between his 2 open lips, and when it would burst with a splash and cover his face with saliva. Taking infinite care, the BFG unscrewed the top of the glass jar and tipped the squiggling, squirming, faintly scarlet Trogglehumper into the wide end of his long trumpet. He put the other end of the trumpet to his lips. He aimed the instrument directly at the flesh lump eater's face. He took a deep breath, puffed out his cheeks, and then, whoof, he blew. Sophie saw a flash of pale red go darting towards the giant's face. For a split second it hovered above the face. Then it was gone. It seemed to have been sucked up the giant's nose, but it had all happened so quickly. Sophie couldn't be sure.
We had better be skiddling away quick to where it is safe, the BFG whispered.
He trotted off for about 100 yards. Then he stopped. He crouched low to the earth.
Now, he said, We is waiting for the gun and flames to begin.
They didn't have to wait long. The air was suddenly pierced by the most fearful roar Sophie had ever heard, and she saw the flesh lump eater's body, all 54 feet of it, rise up off the ground and fall back again with a thump. Then it began to wriggle and twist and bounce about in the most violent fashion. It was quite frightening to watch.
"Oh, roared the flesh lump eater. Hi-yo! He's still asleep, the BFG whispered. The terrible troggle-humping nightmare is beginning to hit him.
Serves him right, Sophie said. She could feel no sympathy for this great brute who ate children as though they were sugar lumps.
Oh, save us!
Screamed the flesh lump eater, thrashing about madly.
He is after me! He is getting me!
The thrashing of limbs and the waving of arms became more violent by the second. It was an awesome thing to watch such a massive creature having such mighty convulsions.
It's Jack,
bellowed the flesh lump eater.
It's the grufful, grunctious Jack. Jack is after me. Jack is whack-crackling me. Jack is spike-sticking me. Jack is splash-plunking me. It is the terrible, fright-swiping Jack.
The flesh lump eater was writhing about over the ground like some colossal tortured snake.
Oh, spare me, Jack, he yelled. Don't hurt me, Jack.
Who is this Jack he's on about? Whispered Sophie.
Jack is the only human being all giants is frightened of, the BFG told her. They is all absolutely terrified of Jack. They is all hearing that Jack is a famous giant killer. Save me, screamed the flesh lump eater. Have mercy on this poor little giant. The beanstalk, he is coming at me with his terrible spike-sticking beanstalk. Take it away, I is begging you, Jack. I is praying you do not touch me with your terrible spike-sticking beanstalk.
Us giants, the BFG whispered, is not knowing very much about this dreaded human being called Jack. We is knowing only that he is a famous giant killer, and that he is owning something called a beanstalk. We is knowing also that the beanstalk is a fearsome thing, and Jack is using it to kill giants. Sophie couldn't stop smiling.
What is you griggling at?
This BFG asked her, slightly nettled. I'll tell you later, Sophie said. The awful nightmare gripped the great brute to such an extent that he was tying his whole body into knots.
Do not do it, Jack, he screeched. I was not eating you, Jack. I is never eating human beings. I swear I has never gobbled a single human being in all my wholesome life.
Liar, said the BFG. Just then, one of the flesh lump eater's flailing fists caught the still fast asleep meat-dripping giant smack in the mouth. At the same time, one of his furiously thrashing legs kicked the snoring gizzard-gulping giant right in the guts. Both the injured giants woke up and leaped to their feet.
He is swiping me right in the mouth, yelled the meat dripper. He is bung-waggling me smack in the guts, shouted the gizzard gulper.
The two of them rushed at the flesh lump eater and began pounding him with their fists and feet. The wretched flesh lump eater woke up with a bang. He awoke straight from one nightmare into another. He roared into battle, and in the bellowing, thumping rough and tumble that followed, one sleeping giant after another got stepped upon or kicked. Soon all 9 of them were on their feet, having the most almighty free-for-all. They punched and kicked and scratched and bit and butted each other as hard as they could. Blood flowed, noses went crunch, teeth fell out like hailstones. The giants roared and screamed and cursed, and for many minutes the noise of battle rolled across the yellow plain. The BFG smiled a big, wide smile of absolute pleasure.
"I is loving it when they is all having a good tough and rumble," he said.
"They'll kill each other," Sophie said.
"Never," the BFG answered. "Those beasts is always bishing and walloping at one another. Soon it will be getting dusky, and they will be galloping off to fill their tummies."
"They're coarse and foul and filthy," Sophie said. "I hate them." As the BFG headed back to the cave, he said quietly,
"We certainly was putting that nightmare to good use, wasn't we?"
"Excellent use," Sophie said. "Well done, you." Hey, Care Bear, welcome in. Dreams. The big friendly giant was seated at the great table in his cave, and he was doing his homework. Sophie sat cross-legged on the tabletop nearby, watching him work. The glass jar containing the one and only good dream they had caught that day stood between them. The BFG, with great care and patience, was printing something on a piece of paper with an enormous pencil. "What are you writing?" Sophie asked him.
"Every dream is having its special label on the bottle," the BFG said. "How else could I be finding the one that I am wanting in a hurry?"
"But can you really and truly tell what sort of dream it's going to be, simply by listening to it?" Sophie asked.
"I can,"
the BFG said, not looking up. "But how? Is it by the way it hums and buzzes?"
"You is less or more right," the BFG said. "Every dream in the world is making a different sort of buzzy hum music, and these grand swashbuckling ears of mine is able to read that music."
"By music do you mean tunes?"
"I is not meaning tunes."
"Then what do you mean?"
"Human beings is having their own music, right or left."
"Right," Sophie said. "Lots of music."
"And sometimes human beings is very overcome when they is hearing wondrous music. They is getting shivers down their spindles, right or left."
"Right," Sophie said.
"So the music is saying something to them. It is sending a message. I do not think the human beings is knowing what that message is, but they is loving it just the same."
"That's about right," Sophie said.
"But because of these jump-squiffling ears of mine," the BFG said, "is not only able to hear the music that dreams is making, but I is understanding it also."
"What do you mean, understanding it?" Sophie said.
"I can read it," the BFG said. "It talks to me. It is like a language."
"I find that just a little hard to believe," Sophie said.
"I'll bet you is also finding it hard to believe in quagwinkles," the BFG said, "and how they is visiting us from the stars."
"Of course I don't believe that," Sophie said. The BFG regarded her gravely with those huge eyes of his.
"I hope you will forgive me," he said. If I tell you that human beings is thinking they is very clever, but they is not. They is nearly all of them nut munchers and squeak pips.
I beg your pardon, Sophie said.
The matter with human beings, the BFG went on, is that they absolutely refusing to believe in anything unless they is actually seeing it right in front of their own schnozzles. Of course, Quagwinkles is existing. I is meeting them often. I is even chittering to them.
He turned away contemptuously from Sophie and resumed his writing. Sophie moved over to read what he had written so far. The letters were printed big and bold, but they were not very well formed. Here is what it said.
This dream is about how I is saving my teacher from drowning. I is diving into the river from a high bridge, and I is dragging my teacher to the bank, and then is giving them kiss of death.
The kiss of what? Sophie asked. The BFG stopped writing and raised his head slowly. His eyes rested on Sophie's face.
I is telling you once before, he said quietly, that I is never having a chance to go to school. I is full of mistakes. They is not my fault. I do my best. You is lovely little girl, but please remember that you is not exactly Miss Know-Everything yourself.
I'm sorry, Sophie said. I really am. It is very rude of me to keep correcting you. The BFG gazed at her for a while longer, then bent his head again to his slow, laborious writing. Tell me honestly, Sophie said, if you blew this dream into my bedroom when I was asleep, would I really and truly start dreaming about how I saved my teacher from drowning by diving off a bridge?
More, the BFG said. A lot more. But I cannot be squibbling the whole grup flunkling dream on a titchy bit of paper. Of course there is more.
The BFG laid down his pencil and placed one massive ear close to the jar. For about 30 seconds he listened intently.
Yes, he said, nodding his great head solemnly up and down. This dream is continuing very nice. It has a very dory hunky ending.
How does it end? Sophie said. Please tell me.
You would be dreaming, the BFG said, that the morning after you is saving the teacher from the river, you is arriving at school, and you is seeing all 500 pupils sitting in the assembly hall, and all the teachers as well. And the head teacher is then standing up and saying, I is wanting the whole school to give 3 cheers for Sophie, because she is so brave and is saving the life of our fine arithmetic teacher, Mr. Figgins, who was unfortunately pushed off the bridge into the river by our gym teacher, Miss Amelia Upscotch. 3 cheers for Sophie. And the whole school is then cheering like mad and shouting, Bravo, well done. And forever after that, even when you is getting your sums and gung swizzled and muggled up, Mr. Figgins is always giving you 10 out of 10 and writing, Good work, Sophie, in your exercise book. Then you is waking up.
I like that dream, Sophie said.
Of course you like it, the BFG said. It is a fizz wizard.
He licked the back of the label and stuck it on the jar.
I is usually writing a bit more than this on the labels, he said. But you is watching me and making me jumpsy.
I'll go and sit somewhere else, Sophie said.
Don't go, he said. Look in the jar carefully, and I think you will be seeing this dream.
Sophie peered into the jar, and there, sure enough, she saw the faint translucent outline of something about the size of a hen's egg. There was just a touch of color in it, pale sea green, soft and shimmering and very beautiful. There it lay, this small oblong sea-green jellyish thing. At the bottom of the jar, quite peaceful but pulsing gently, the whole of it moving in and out ever so slightly, as though it were breathing. "It's moving!" Sophie cried. "It's alive!"
"Of course it's alive."
"What will you feed it on?" Sophie asked.
"It is not needing any food," the BFG told her.
"That's cruel," Sophie said. "Everything alive needs food of some sort, even trees and plants."
"The north wind is alive," the BFG said. "It is moving. It touches you on the cheek and on the hands, but nobody is feeding it."
Sophie was silent. This extraordinary giant was disturbing her ideas. He seemed to be leading her towards mysteries that were beyond her understanding.
"A dream is not needing anything," the BFG went on. "If it's a good one, it is waiting peaceably forever until it is released and allowed to do its job. If it is a bad one, it is always fighting to get out."
The BFG stood up and walked over to one of the many shelves and placed the latest jar among the thousands of others. "Please, can I see some of the other dreams?" Sophie asked him. The BFG hesitated.
"Nobody is ever seeing them before," he said. "But perhaps after all I is letting you have a little peep."
He picked her up off the table and stood her on the palm of one of his huge hands. He carried her towards the shelves.
"Over here is some of the good dreams," he said. "The Piz-Wizards."
"Would you hold me closer so I can read the labels?" Sophie said.
"My labels is only telling bits of it," the BFG said. "The dreams is usually much longer. The labels just remind me."
Sophie started to read the labels. The first one seemed long enough to her. It went right around the jar, and as she read it, she had to keep turning the jar. And this is what it said.
"Today I is in class, and I discover that if I is staring very hard at my teacher in a special way, I is able to put her to sleep. So I keep staring at her, and in the end her head drops onto her desk, and she goes fast to sleep, and snorkles loudly. Then in marches the head teacher, and he shouts, 'Wake up, Mrs. Plumridge! How dare you go to sleep in class? Go fetch your hat and coat and leave this school forever. You is sacked.' But in a jiffy I is putting the head teacher to sleep as well, and he just crumples slowly to the floor like a lump of jelly, and there he lies all in a heap and starts snorkeling even louder than Miss Plumridge. And then I is hearing my mummy's voice saying, 'Wake up, for your breakfast ready.'"
"What a funny dream," Sophie said.
"It's a ring beller," the BFG said. "It's Wopsy."
Inside the jar, just below the edge of the label, Sophie could see the putting-to-sleep dream lying peacefully on the bottom, pulsing gently, sea-green like the other one, but perhaps a trifle larger. "Do you have separate dreams for boys and girls?" Sophie asked.
"Of course," the BFG said. "If I is giving a girl's dream to a boy, even if it was really Wopsy girl's dream, the boy would be waking up and thinking what a rot, bungling, drink-sludging old dream that was."
"Boys would," Sophie said.
"These here is all girls' dreams on this shelf," the BFG said.
"Can I read a boy's dream?"
"You can,"
the BFG said, and he lifted her higher to a higher shelf. The label on the nearest boy's dream jar read as follows:
is making myself a marvelous pair of suction boots, and when I put them on, I is able to walk straight up the kitchen wall and across the ceiling. Well, I is walking upside down on the ceiling when my big sister comes in, and she is starting to yell at me, as she always does. Yelling, "What on earth is you doing up there, walking on the ceiling?" And I looks down at her, and I smiles, and I says, "I told you was driving me up the wall, and now you has done it."
"I find that one rather silly," Sophie said.
"Boys wouldn't," the BFG said, grinning. "It's another ring beller. Perhaps you has seen enough now."
"Let me read another boy's dream," Sophie said. The next label said, "The telephone rings in our house, and my father picks it up and says in his very important telephone voice, 'Simpkins speaking.' Then his face goes white and his voice goes all funny, and he says, 'What? Who?' And then he says, 'Yes, sir, I understand, but surely it is me you is wishing to speak to, and not my little son.' My father's face is going from white to dark purple, and he is gulping like a lobster stuck in his throat. And then, at last, he is saying, 'Yes, sir, very well, I will get him, sir.' And he turns to me, and he says in a rather respectful voice, 'Is you knowing the President of the United States?' And I says, 'No, but I expect he is hearing about me.' Then I is having a long talk on the phone and saying things like, 'Let me take care of it, Mr. President. You'll bungle it all up if you do it your way.' And my father's eyes is goggling right out of his head, and that is when I is hearing my father's real voice saying, 'Get up, you lazy slob, or you will be late for school.'" "Boys are crazy," Sophie said. "Let me read this next one." Sophie started reading the next label. "Hey, Suzanne, welcome back."
"I is having a bath, and I is discovering that if I press quite hard on my tummy button, a funny feeling comes over me, and suddenly my legs is not there, nor is my arms. In fact, I has become absolutely invisible all over. I is still there, but no one can see me, not even myself. So my mummy comes in and says, 'Where is that child? He is in the bath a minute ago, and he can't possibly have washed himself properly.' So I says, 'Here I is,' and she says, 'Where?' And I says, 'Here,' and she says, 'Where?' and I says, 'Here,' and she yells, 'Henry, come up quick.' When my daddy rushes in, I is washing myself, and my daddy sees the soap floating around in the air, but of course he is not seeing me, and he shouts, 'Where are you, boy?' And I says, 'Here,' and he says, 'Where?' and I says, 'Here,' and he says, 'Where?' and I says, 'Here,' and he says, 'The soap, boy, the soap is flying in the air.' Then I press my tummy button again, and now I is visible. My daddy is squiffy with excitement, and he says, 'You is the invisible boy.' And I says, 'Now I is going to have some fun.' So when I is out of the bath and I have dried myself, I put on my dressing gown and slippers, and I press my tummy button again and become invisible. And I go down into the town and walk the streets, of course. Only me is invisible, but not the things I is wearing. So when people is seeing a dressing gown and slippers floating along the street with nobody in it, there is a panic, with everybody yelling, 'A ghost! A ghost!' And people is screaming left and right, and big, strong policemen is running for their lives, and best of all, I see Mr. Grummet, my algebra teacher, coming out of a pub, and I float up to him and say, 'Boo!' And he lets out a frightsome howl and dashes back into the pub, and then I is waking up and feeling happy as a whiff-squiddler."
"Pretty ridiculous," Sophie said. All the same, she couldn't resist reaching down and pressing her own tummy button to see if it worked. Nothing happened.
Dreams is very mystical things, the BFG said. Human beings is not understanding them at all. Not even their brainiest professors is understanding them. Has you seen enough?
Just one last one, Sophie said. This one here. She started reading.
I has written a book, and it is so exciting nobody can put it down. As soon as you has read the first line, you is so hooked on it you cannot stop until the last page. All the city's people is walking in the streets bumping into each other because their faces is buried in my book, and dentist is reading it and trying to fill teeths at the same time, but nobody minds because they is all reading it. Too, in the dentist chair, drivers is reading it while driving, and cars is crashing all over the country. Brain surgeons is reading it while they is operating on brains, and airline pilots is reading it and going to Timbuktu instead of London. Football players is reading it on the field because they can't put it down, and so is the Olympic runners while they is running. Everybody has to see what is going on to happen next in my book, and when I wake up, I is still tingling with excitement at being the greatest writer the world has ever known, until my mummy comes in and says I was looking at your English exercise book last night, and really your spelling is atrocious, so is your punctuation. That's enough for now, the BFG said. There is Deluans more, but my arm is getting tired holding you up.
What are all those over there? Sophie said. Why have they got such tiny labels?
That, the BFG said, is because one day I is catching so many dreams, I is not having time or energy to write out long labels. But there is enough to remind me.
Can I look? Sophie said. The long-suffering BFG carried her across to the jars she was pointing to. Sophie read them rapidly, one after the other.
I is climbing Mount Everest with just my pussycat for company. I is inventing a car that runs on toothpaste. I is able to make the electric lights go on and off just by wishing it. I is only an 8-year-old little boy, but I is growing a splendid bushy beard, and all the other boys is jealous. I is able to jump out of any high window and float down safely. I has a pet bee that makes rock and roll music when it flies.
What amazes me, Sophie said, is how you ever learned to write in the first place.
Ah,
said the BFG.
I has been wondering how long it is before you is asking me that.
Considering you never went to school, I think it's quite marvelous, Sophie said. How did you learn? The BFG crossed the cave and opened a tiny secret door in the wall. He took out a book, very old and tattered. By human standards, it was an ordinary-sized book, but it looked like a postage stamp in his huge hand.
One night, he said, I is blowing a dream through a window, and I sees this book lying on the little boy's bedroom table. I wanted it so very badly, you understand. But I is refusing to steal it. I would never do that.
So how did you get it? Sophie asked.
I borrowed it, the BFG said, smiling a little. Just for a short time I borrowed it.
How long have you had it? Sophie asked.
Perhaps only about 80 years, the BFG said. Soon I shall be putting it back.
And that's how you taught yourself to write? Sophie asked him.
I is reading it hundreds of times, the BFG said. And I is still reading it and teaching new words to myself and how to write them. It is the most scrum-diddly-umptious story.
Sophie took the book out of his hand. Nicholas Nickleby.
By Dahl's chickens,
the BFG said. By who? Just then there came a tremendous noise of galloping feet from outside the cave. What's that? Sophie cried.
That is all the giants off to another country to guzzle human beings, the BFG said.
He quickly popped Sophie into his waistcoat pocket, then hurried to the cave entrance and rolled back the stone. Sophie, peeping out of her spy hole, saw all 9 of the fearsome giants coming past at full gallop.
"Where is you off to tonight?" shouted the BFG. "Where's all of us fluff bunking off to England tonight?"
answered the flesh-lump eater as they went galloping past.
"England is a luxurious land, and we is fancying a few nice little English chidlers." "Aye," shouted the maid-masher, "is knowing where there is a giggle house for girls, and I is guzzling myself full as a froth-blower." "And I knows where there is a boggle box for boys," shouted the gizzard gulper. "All I has to do is reach in and grab myself a handful. English boys is tasting lick-wishy."
In a few seconds, the 9 galloping giants were out of sight. "What did he mean?" Sophie said, poking her head out of the pocket. "What is a giggle house for girls?"
"He is meaning a girls' school," the BFG said. "He will be eating them by the bundle."
"Oh, no!" cried Sophie.
"And boys from a boys' school,"
said the BFG. It mustn't happen," Sophie cried out. "We've got to stop them. We can't just sit here and do nothing."
"There's not a thing we can do," the BFG said. "We is helpless as horse feathers."
He sat down in a large, craggy blue rock near the entrance to his cave. He took Sophie from his pocket and put her beside him on the rock.
"It is now quite safe for you to be outside until they is coming back," he said.
The sun had dipped below the horizon, and it was getting dark. I hope everybody is enjoying the story. I appreciate you all for being here. The Great Plan. "We absolutely have got to stop them," Sophie cried. "Put me back in your pocket quick, and we'll chase after them and warn everyone in England they're coming."
"Redunculous and impossible," the BFG said. "They is going 2 times as fast as me, and they is finishing their guzzle before we is halfway."
"But we can't just sit here and do nothing," Sophie cried. "How many girls and boys are they going to eat tonight?"
"Many," the BFG said. "The flesh-lumping giant alone has a most squaddling wopsy appetite."
"Will he snatch them out of their beds while they're sleeping?"
"Like peas out of a pottle,"
the BFG said. "I can't bear to think of it," Sophie cried.
"Then don't," the BFG said. "For years and years I is sitting here on this very rock every night after night when they is galloping away, and I is feeling so sad for all the human beings they is going to gobble up, that I has had to get used to it."
Oh, excuse me, I'm not tired.
"There is nothing I can do. If I wasn't a titchy little runt giant only 24 feet high, then I would be stopping them. But that is absolutely out of the window."
"Do you always know where they're going?" Sophie asked.
"Always," the BFG said. "Every night they is yelling at me as they go blooding past, or booting past." The other day they is yelling we is off to Mississippi and Missouri to guzzle them both.
Disgusting, Sophie said. I hate them. She and the big friendly giant sat quietly side by side on the blue rock in the gathering dusk. Sophie had never felt so helpless in her life. After a while she stood up and cried out, I can't stand it. Just think of those poor girls and boys who are going to be eaten alive in a few hours' time. We can't just sit here and do nothing. We've got to go after those brutes.
No,
the BFG said. We must, Sophie cried. Why won't you go? The BFG sighed, shook his head firmly.
I has told you 5 or 6 times, he said, and the third will be the last. I is never showing myself to human beings.
Why ever not?
If I do, they will be putting me in the zoo with all of the jiggly rafts and the caterpillars.
Nonsense, Sophie said.
And they will be sending you straight back to an orphanage,
the BFG went on.
Grown-up human beings is not famous for their kindness. They is all squiffle rotters and grink sludgers.
That is simply not true, Sophie cried angrily. Some of them are very kind indeed.
Who?
The BFG said.
Name one.
The Queen of England, Sophie said. You can't call her a squiffle rotter or a grink sludger.
Well,
the BFG said. You can't call her a squeak pip or a not mucher either, Sophie said, getting angrier and angrier.
The flesh lump eater is longing dearly to guzzle her up,
the BFG said, smiling a little now. Who, the Queen? Sophie cried aghast.
Yes, the BFG answered. Flesh lump eater says he is never eating a queen, and he thinks perhaps she has an especially scrumdiddlyumptious flavor.
How dare he? Sophie cried.
But Flesh lump eater says there is too many soldiers around her palace, and he doesn't try it.
He better not, Sophie said.
He is also saying he would like very much to guzzle one of the soldiers in his pretty red suit, but he is worried about those big black furry hats they is wearing. He thinks they might be sticking in his throat.
I hope he chokes, Sophie said.
Flesh lump eater is a very careful giant, the BFG said.
Sophie was silent for a few moments. Then, suddenly, in a voice filled with excitement, she cried out, I've got it! By golly, I think I've got it!
Got what?
Asked the BFG. The answer, cried Sophie. We'll go to the Queen of England. It's a terrific idea. If I went and told the Queen about those disgusting man-eating giants, I'm sure she'd do something about it. The BFG looked down at her sadly and shook his head.
She is never believing you, he said. Never in a month of Mondays.
I think she would.
Never, the BFG said. It is sounding such a wonky tall story. The Queen will be laughing and saying, What awful rub squash.
She would not.
Of course she would, the BFG said. I has told you before that human beings is simply not believing in giants.
Then it's up to us to find a way of making her believe in them, Sophie said.
And how is you getting in to see the Queen anyway? The BFG asked.
Now, hold on a sec, Sophie said. Just you hold on a sec, because I've got another idea.
Your ideas is full of crodswoggle,
the BFG said. Not this one, Sophie said. You say that if we tell the Queen, she would never believe us.
I is certain she wouldn't, the BFG said.
But we aren't going to tell her, Sophie said excitedly. "We don't have to tell her. We'll make her dream it."
"That is an even more froth-bungling suggestion," the BFG said. "Dreams is lots of fun, but nobody is believing in dreams either. You is only believing in a dream while you is actually dreaming it. But as soon as you is waking up, you is saying, 'Oh, thank goodness it was only a dream.'"
"Don't worry about that part of it," Sophie said. "I can fix that."
"Never can you fix it," the BFG said.
"I can. I swear I can. But first of all, let me ask you a very important question. Here it is. Can you make a person dream absolutely anything in the world?"
"Anything you like,"
the BFG said proudly. "And if I wanted to dream that I was in a flying bathtub with silver wings, could you make me dream it?"
"I could,"
the BFG said. "But how?" Sophie said. "You obviously don't have exactly that dream in your collection."
"I do not," the BFG said, "but I could soon be mixing it up."
"How could you mix it up?"
"It is a little bit like mixing a cake," the BFG said. "If you is putting the right amounts of all the different ingredients into it, you is making the cake come out any way you want. Sugary, spongy, curranty, Christmassy, and grobswitchy. Is the same with dreams."
"Go on," Sophie said.
"I has dullions of dreams on my shelves, right or left."
"Right," Sophie said.
"I has dreams about bathtubs, lots of them. I has dreams about silver wings. I has dreams about flying. So all I has to do is mix those dreams together in the proper way, and I is very quickly making a dream where you is flying in a bathtub with silver wings."
"I see what you mean," Sophie said. "But I didn't know you could mix one dream with another."
"Dreams like being mixed," the BFG answered. "They is getting very lonesome all by themselves in those glassy bottles."
"Right," Sophie said. "Now then, do we have dreams about the Queen of England?"
"Lots of them,"
the BFG said. "And about giants?"
"Of course."
"And about giants eating people?"
"Swiggles of them," the BFG said.
"And about little girls like me?"
"Those is commonest of all," the BFG said. "I has bottles and bottles of dreams about little girls."
"And you could mix them all up just as you want to?" Sophie asked, getting more and more excited.
"Of course," the BFG said. "But how is this helping us? I think you is barking up the wrong dog."
Hold on," Sophie said. "Listen carefully. I want you to mix a dream which you will blow into the Queen of England's bedroom when she is asleep, and this is how it will go."
"Now, hang on a mintick," the BFG said. "How is I possibly going to get near enough to the Queen of England's bedroom to blow in my dream? You is talking dumb silly."
"I'll tell you that later," Sophie said. "For the moment, please listen carefully. Here is the dream I want you to mix. Are you paying attention?"
"Very close," the BFG said.
"I want the Queen to dream that 9 disgusting giants, each one about 50 feet tall, are galloping to England in the night. She must dream their names as well. What are their names again?"
"Flesh lump eater," the BFG said. "Man hugger, bone cruncher, child chewer, meat dripper, gizzard gulper, maid masher, blood bottler, and the butcher boy."
"Let her dream all those names," Sophie said, "and let her dream that they will be creeping into England in the depths of the witching hour and snatching little boys and girls from their bed. Let her dream that they will be reaching into the bedroom windows and pulling little boys and girls out of their beds. And then," Sophie paused, "do they eat them on the spot, or do they carry them away first?" Sophie asked.
They is usually just popping them straight into their mouth like popcorn, the BFG said.
Put that in the dream, Sophie said. And then the dream must say that when their tummies are full, they will go galloping back to giant country where no one can find them.
Is that all? The BFG said.
Certainly not, Sophie said. You must then explain to the queen in her dream that there is a big friendly giant who can tell her where all those beasts are living, so that she can send her soldiers and her armies to capture them once and for all. And now let her dream one last and important thing. Let her dream that there is a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill who will tell her where the big friendly giant is hiding.
Where is he hiding?
Asked the BFG. We'll come to that later, Sophie said. So the queen dreams her dream, right?
Right, the BFG said.
Then she wakes up, and the first thing she thinks is, oh, what a horrid dream. I'm so glad it was only a dream. And then she looks up from her pillow, and what does she see?
What does she see?
The BFG asked. She sees a little girl called Sophie sitting on her windowsill, right there in real life before her very eyes.
How is you going to be sitting on the queen's windowsill, may I beg? The BFG said.
You are going to put me there. Wrong voice. You are going to put me there, Sophie said. And that's the lovely part about it. If someone dreams that there is a little girl sitting on her windowsill, and then she wakes up and sees that the little girl really is sitting there, that is a dream come true, is it not?
I is beginning to see where you is driving to, the BFG said. If the queen is knowing that part of her dream is true, then perhaps she is believing the rest of it is true as well.
That's it, Sophie said. But I shall have to convince her of that myself.
You said you was wanting the dream to say there is a big friendly giant who is going to talk to the queen.
Absolutely, Sophie said. You must. You are the only one who can tell her where to find the other giants.
How is I meeting the queen? Asked the BFG. I is not wanting to be shooted by her soldiers.
The soldiers are only in the front of the palace, Sophie said. At the back there is a huge garden, and there are no soldiers in there at all. There is a very high wall with spikes on it around the garden to stop people climbing in, but you could simply walk over it.
How is you knowing all this about the Queen's palace? The BFG asked.
Last year I was in a different orphanage, Sophie said. It was in London, and we used to go for walks all around there.
Is you helping me to find this palace? The BFG asked. I has never dared to go hide and sneaking around London in my life.
I shall show you the way, Sophie said confidently.
I is frightened of London, the BFG said.
Don't be. It's full of tiny, dark streets, and there are very few people about in the witching hour.
The BFG picked Sophie up between one finger and a thumb and placed her gently on the palm of the other hand. Is the Queen's palace very big? He asked.
Huge, Sophie said.
Then how is we finding the right bedroom?
That's up to you, Sophie said. You're supposed to be an expert at that sort of thing.
And you is absolutely sure the Queen will not put me in a zoo with all the caterpillars?
Of course she won't, Sophie said. You'll be a hero, and you'll never have to eat snozcumbers again.
Sophie saw the BFG's eyes widen. He licked his lips. You mean it? He said. You really mean it? No more disgustive snozcumbers.
You couldn't get one if you wanted to, Sophie said. Humans don't grow them. That did it. The BFG got to his feet.
When is you wanting me to mix this special dream? He asked.
Now, Sophie said. At once.
When is we going to see the Queen? He said.
Tonight, Sophie said. As soon as you've mixed the dream.
Tonight, the BFG cried. Why such a flush-bunkling furry?
If we can't save tonight's children, we can anyway save tomorrow's, Sophie said. What is more, I'm getting famished. I haven't had a thing to eat for 24 hours.
Then we had better get crackling,
the BFG said, moving back towards the cave. Sophie kissed him on the tip of his thumb. I knew you'd do it, she said. Come on, let's hurry. Well, I hope you're all enjoying. Fantastic. Hey, Tess, I didn't see you sneak in here. Awesome. Awesome. Well, I think we are going to finish this on Wednesday. I'm not done yet, but I'm thinking we're going to do the third part on Wednesday. That'll be my normal live. So I've been live twice. I've been live twice this week already, 2 days in a row. Yeah, if I go tomorrow and then Wednesday again, my voice will give out. But we still have more to go tonight. So I'm going to continue. It will be the same time, Suzanne. Absolutely. Yes, you will be able to. It'll be up on the tubes under my channel, which is same username, if I can think. Yeah, UndeadPapa. If you go search for it on the tubes, it'll be there. All the lives I do are 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Smokey Joe, I honestly, if my voice could handle it, I'd probably do this every night just because I enjoy it so much. And believe me, I'm not going to run out of anything. I'm not going to run out of things to read because my current story library that I've built has almost 1,600 stories in it. Short stories, novels, yeah. So we're not going to run out of anything anytime soon. Whew. You know what? It's hot in here. Give me a minute. I'm just going to put my headband on so I keep the... So I can keep my sweat out of my face. All right. That is good enough. Well, I appreciate that. Oh, Smokey Joe, I am very sorry for your loss. I lost my father back in 2010, and yeah, it hurts. But I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad this can provide a little bit of an escape and comfort for you. I'm really glad you're here. Tessa, there's about 10 dozen ways to wear these stupid things. Yeah. This is why I love you guys. Sincerely. Somebody comes in here, is hurting a little bit, and you guys all rally around them and lift them up. It's beautiful. Really beautiful. It just shows that you guys have helped me build a community based on kindness. And that's important. I love it. I really do. I absolutely adore you guys. I appreciate that. Because it's not, to me, it's not just about the stories. It's about everybody coming together, sort of kind of that's why I say, it keeps the campfire lit. Everybody coming in together and enjoying a couple of hours of just being away from the chaos and whatever is going on in your life. You're able to step away for a couple of hours and relax and listen to a story. Be around like-minded people who just want to sit and vibe. It's a beautiful thing. It really is. All right. Well, let me get back to the book here. Mixing the Dream. It was dark now. The night had already begun. The BFG, with Sophie sitting on his hand, hurried into the cave and put on those brilliant, blinding lights that seemed to come from nowhere. He placed Sophie on the table.
"Stay there, please," he said. "And no chittering. I is needing to listen only to silence when I is mixing up such a naughty, plexicated dream as this."
He hurried away from her. He got out an enormous, empty glass jar that was the size of a washing machine. He clutched it to his chest and hurried towards the shelves on which stood the thousands and thousands of smaller jars containing... Oh, what a time to have hiccups. Holy cow.
"Dreams about giants," he muttered to himself as he searched the labels. "The giants is guzzling human beings. No, not that one. Nor that one. Ah, here's one. And here's another."
He grabbed the jars and unscrewed the tops. He tipped the dreams into the enormous jar he was clutching, and as he went in, Sophie caught a glimpse of a small green blob tumbling from one jar into the other. The BFG hurried towards another shelf.
"Now," he muttered, "I is wanting dreams about giggle houses for girls, about boggle boxes for boys."
He was becoming very tense now. Sophie could almost see the excitement bubbling inside him as he scurried back and forth among his beloved jars. There must have been 50,000 dreams altogether up there on the shelves, but he seemed to know almost exactly where every one of them was.
"Dreams about a little girl," he muttered, "and dreams about me, about the BFG. Come on, hurry up, get on with it. Now where in the wonky world is I keeping those?"
And so it went on. In about a half an hour, the BFG had found all the dreams he wanted and had tipped them into the one huge jar. He put the jar on the table. Sophie sat watching him but said nothing. Inside the big jar, lying on the bottom of it, she could clearly see about 50 of those oval sea-green jellyfish shapes, all pulsing gently in and out, some lying on top of others, but each one still a quite separate individual dream.
"Now we is mixing them,"
the BFG announced. He went to the cupboard where he kept his bottles of frobscottle, and from it he took out a gigantic egg beater. It was one of those that has a handle on it which you turn, and down below there were a lot of overlapping blades that go whizzing around. He inserted the bottom end of this contraption into the big jar where the dreams were lying.
Watch,
he said. He started turning the handle very fast. Flashes of green and blue exploded inside the jar. The dreams were being whisked into a sea-green froth. "The poor things!" Sophie cried.
"They is not feeling it,"
the BFG said as he turned the handle.
"Dreams is not like human beings or animals. They has no brains. They is made of zazzamus."
After a minute, the BFG stopped whisking. The whole bottle was now full to the brim with large bubbles. They were almost exactly like the bubbles we ourselves blow from soapy water, except that these have even brighter and more beautiful colors swimming on their surfaces.
"Keep watching,"
the BFG said. Quite slowly, the topmost bubble rose up through the neck of the jar and floated away. A second one followed, then a third and a fourth. Soon the cave was filled with hundreds of beautifully colored bubbles, all drifting gently through the air. It was truly a wonderful sight. As Sophie watched them, they all started floating toward the cave entrance, which was still open. "They're trying to get out," Sophie whispered.
"Of course,"
the BFG said. "Where to?"
"Those is all tiny dream bits that I isn't using," the BFG said. "They is going back to the misty country to join up with proper dreams."
"It's all a bit beyond me," Sophie said.
"Dreams is full of mystery and magic," the BFG said. "Do not try to understand them. Look in the big bottle, and you will now see the dream you is wanting for the queen."
Sophie turned and stared into the great jar. On the bottom of it, something was thrashing around wildly, bouncing up and down and flinging itself against the walls of the jar. "Good heavens!" she cried. "Is that it?"
"That's it,"
the BFG said proudly. "But it's horrible," Sophie cried. "It's jumping about. It wants to get out."
"That's because it is a truggle humper," the BFG said. "It's a nightmare."
"Oh, but I don't want to give the queen a nightmare," Sophie cried.
"If she is dreaming about giants guzzling up little boys and girls, then what is you expecting to be except a nightmare?" the BFG said.
"Oh, no!" Sophie cried.
"Oh, yes," the BFG said. "A dream is where you is seeing little childers being eaten is about the most frightsome truggle-humping dream you can get. It's a kicksy bog thumper. It's a whopsy grob switcher. It is all of them riddled into one. It is as bad as that dream I blew into the flesh lumper eater this afternoon. It is worse."
Sophie stared down at the fearful nightmare dream that was still thrashing away in the huge glass jar. It was much larger than the others. It was about the size and shape of, shall we say, a turkey's egg. It was jellyish. It had tinges of bright scarlet deep inside of it. There was something terrible about the way it was throwing itself against the sides of the jar. "I don't want to give the queen a nightmare," Sophie said.
"I is thinking," the BFG said, "that your queen will be happy to have a nightmare if a nightmare is going to save a lot of human beings from being gobbled up by filthsome giants. Is I right, or is I left?"
"I suppose you're right," Sophie said. "It's got to be done."
"She will soon be getting over it," the BFG said.
Wrong voice. "Have you put all the other important things into it?" Sophie asked.
"When I is blowing that dream into the queen's bedroom," the BFG said, "she will be dreaming every single little thing-a-ling-a-ling you is asked me to make her dream."
"About me sitting in the windowsill?"
"That part is very strong."
"And about a big friendly giant?"
I is putting in a nice long gobbet about him, the BFG said.
As he spoke, he picked up one of his smaller jars and very quickly tipped the struggling, thrashing Trogglehumper out of the large jar into the small one. Then he screwed the lid tightly onto the small jar.
"That's it,"
he announced.
"We is now ready."
He fetched his suitcase and put the small jar into it. "Why bother to take a great big suitcase when you only got one jar?" Sophie said. "You could put the jar in your pocket." The BFG looked down at her and smiled.
"By goggles," he said, taking the jar out of the suitcase. "Your head is not quite so full of grim sludge after all. I can see you is not born last week."
"Thank you, kind sir," Sophie said, making a little curtsy from the tabletop.
"Is you ready to leave?" the BFG asked.
"I'm ready," Sophie cried. Her heart was beginning to thump at the thought of what they were about to do. It really was a wild and crazy thing. Perhaps they would both be thrown into prison. The BFG was putting on his great black cloak. He tucked the jar into a pocket in his cloak. He picked up his long trumpet-like dream blower. Then he turned and looked at Sophie, who was still on the tabletop.
"The dream bottle is in my pocket. Is you going to sit in there with it during the travel?"
"Never!" Sophie cried. "I refuse to sit next to that beastly thing."
"Then where is you going to sit?" the BFG asked her.
Sophie looked him over for a few minutes. Then she said, "If you would be kind enough to swivel one of your lovely big ears so that it is lying flat like a dish, that would make a very cozy place for me to sit."
"By gumbo, that is a squackling good idea," the BFG said.
100,000 likes. Thank you, you guys. We still have some time. Can you get it to 200,000? I'm kidding. Seriously. Slowly, he swiveled his huge right ear until it was like a great shell facing the heavens. He lifted Sophie up and placed her into it. The ear itself was about the size of a large tea tray, was full of the same channels and crinkles as a human ear. It was extremely comfortable. "I hope I don't fall down your ear hole," Sophie said, edging away from the large hole beside her.
"Be careful not to do that," the BFG said. "You would be giving me a crunking headache."
The nice thing about being there was that she could whisper directly into his ear.
"You is tickling me a bit," the BFG said. "Please do not jiggle about."
"I will try not to," Sophie said. "Are we ready?"
"Oh, don't do that."
"I didn't do anything," Sophie said.
"You is talking too loud. You is forgetting that I is hearing every little thing-a-ling-a-ling 50 times louder than usual. And there is you shouting away right inside my ear."
"Oh, gosh," Sophie murmured. "I forgot that."
"Your voice is sounding like thunder and trumpets."
"I'm so sorry," Sophie whispered. "Is that better?"
"No," cried the BFG. "It sounds as though you is shooting off a blunderbuss."
"Then how can I talk to you?" Sophie whispered.
"Don't!" cried the poor BFG. "Please don't. Each word is like you dropping buzz bombs in my ear hole."
Sophie tried speaking right under her breath. "Is this better?" she said. She spoke so softly she couldn't even hear her own voice.
"That's better," the BFG said. "Now I is hearing you very nicely. What is it you trying to say to me just now?"
"I was saying, are we ready?"
"We is off," cried the BFG, heading for the cave entrance. "We is off to meet Her Magister the Queen."
Outside the cave, he rolled the large stone back into place and set off at a tremendous gallop. I am so sick of the rain here. I have my brother-in-law coming out to look at my roof because there was a leak in my kitchen. So it's like, I really don't have the money for this right now. So if you want to help out, you can go visit the UndeadPapa Mercantile and get your UndeadPapa merch. Oh, goodness. Actually, I was going to ask you guys, what would you think of a t-shirt that says, like my closing that I use at the end of every live, please be kind to each other, be kind to yourself, because kindness matters and so do you. I think that would be cool. Well, I will consider that for the next merch drop. And there's already three designs up there. I could do bumper stickers. I could do regular. I mean, I can do anything. I can do stickers. I can do magnets. I can do all kinds of stuff. Yep, that's one to consider. Keep the campfire lit. Tried all afternoon, huh? What the heck? That's weird. I'll have to take a look myself and see. Yeah, that's weird. Oh, let me take a look. Yeah, Laura, that's a very important mantra that I came up with, probably 20 years ago. And I found that it fits at the end of the live. So that's why I say it. It's kind of like the theme for the whole community here. It's just kindness. Well, Tessa, just make sure you change out your shirt every once in a while. You get it, wash it. That might get a little weird. Family friendly show. Family friendly show. Care Bear, I like to think so. I'm not trying. I always say it. I'm not trying to change the world with these lives. Maybe change a few hearts, though. Yep. And kindness is free. Honestly, it's a low freaking bar, man. Just don't be a jerk. It's like I told my kids, always lead with kindness, because the people that are really grumpy, it just pisses them off even more. I told my youngest daughter, she had some girls at school that were giving her a hard time. And I told her, I said, next time she says anything to you, turn around and look at her and go, hey, those are really nice shoes, and then walk away. And I told her, I said, you will absolutely watch their brain melt in real time because they have no idea what to do with that. Care Bear, right. You're right. There is too much. That's why I say in here, we are all just human beings. That's all that matters. You caught the Jim Jams from UndeadPapa. I got the Jim Jams, see? That's really how I felt when I first read that. It was just like, it sounds like something you would hear in an old radio broadcast. Get your Jim Jams. Spread it on some bread. All right. Gotta stop goofing around here. Journey to London. The great yellow wasteland lay dim and milky in the moonlight as the big friendly giant went galloping across it. Sophie, still wearing only her nightie, was reclining comfortably in a crevice of the BFG's right ear. She was actually in the outer rim of the ear, near the top where the edge of the ear folds over, and this folding over bit made a sort of roof for her and gave her wonderful protection against the rushing wind. What is more, she was lying on skin that was soft and warm and almost velvety. Nobody, she told herself, had ever traveled in greater comfort. Sophie peeped out over the rim of the ear and watched the desolate landscape of giant country go whizzing by. They were certainly moving fast. The BFG went bouncing off the ground as though there were rockets in his toes, and each stride he took lifted him about 100 feet into the air. But he had not yet gone into that whizzing top gear of his. When the ground became blurred by speed, and the wind howled and his feet didn't seem to be touching anything but air, that would come later. Sophie had not slept for a long time. She was very tired. She was also warm and comfortable. She dozed off. Sophie had not slept Sophie didn't know how long she slept. But when she woke up again and looked over the edge of the ear, the landscape had changed completely. They were in a green country now, with mountains and forests. It was still dark, but the moon was shining as brightly as ever. Suddenly, and without slowing his pace, the BFG turned his head sharply to the left. For the first time during the entire journey, he spoke a few words.
"Look, quick, over there,"
he said, pointing his trumpet. Sophie looked in the direction he was pointing. Through the murky darkness, all she saw at first was a great cloud of dust about 300 yards away.
"Those is the other giants all galloping back home after their guzzle," the BFG said.
Then Sophie saw them. In the light of the moon, she saw all 9 of those monstrous, half-naked brutes thundering across the landscape together. They were all galloping in a pack, their necks craned forward, their arms bent at the elbows, and worst of all, their stomachs bulging. The strides they took were incredible. Their speed was unbelievable. Their feet pounded and thundered on the ground and left a great sheet of dust behind them. But in 10 seconds, they were gone.
"A lot of little girlsies and boysies is no longer sleeping in their beds tonight,"
the BFG said. Sophie felt quite ill. But this grim encounter made her more than ever determined to go through with her mission. It must have been about an hour or so later that the BFG began to slow his pace.
"We is in England now," he said suddenly.
Dark though it was, Sophie could see that they were in a country of green fields with neat hedges in between the fields. There were hills with trees all over them, and occasionally there were roads with the lights of cars moving along. Each time they came to a road, the BFG was over it and away, and no motorist could possibly have seen anything except a quick black shadow flashing overhead. All at once, a curious orange-colored glow appeared in the sky ahead of them.
"We is coming close to London," the BFG said.
He slowed to a trot. He began looking about cautiously. Groups of houses were now appearing on all sides, but there were still no lights in the windows. It was too early for anyone to be getting up yet. "Someone is bound to see us," Sophie said.
"They is never seeing me," the BFG said confidently. "You is forgetting that I is doing this sort of thing for years and years. No human being is ever catching even the smallest wink of me.
I did, Sophie whispered.
Ah, he said. Yes, but you was the very first.
During the next half hour, things moved so swiftly and so silently that Sophie, crouching in the giant's ear, was unable to understand exactly what was going on. They were in streets. There were houses everywhere. Sometimes there were shops. There were bright lamps in the streets. There were quite a few people about, and there were cars with lights on. But nobody ever noticed the BFG. It was impossible to understand quite how he did it. There was a kind of magic in his movements. He seemed to melt into the shadows. He would glide. That was the only word to describe his way of moving. He would glide noiselessly from one dark place to another, always moving, always gliding forward through the streets of London. His black cloak blending with the shadows of the night. It is quite possible that one or two late-night wanderers might have thought they saw a tall black shadow skimming swiftly down a murky side street. But even if they had, they never would have believed their own eyes. They would have dismissed it as an illusion and blamed themselves for seeing things that weren't there. Sophie and the BFG came at last to a large place full of trees. There was a road running through it and a lake. There were no people in this place, and the BFG stopped for the first time since they had set out from his cave many hours before. What's the matter? Sophie whispered in her under-the-breath voice.
I is in a bit of a puddle, he said.
You're doing marvelously, Sophie whispered.
No, I isn't, he said. I is now completely boggled. I is lost.
But why?
Because we is meant to be in the middle of London, and suddenly we is in green pastures.
Don't be silly, Sophie whispered. This is the middle of London. It's called Hyde Park. I know exactly where we are.
You is joking.
I'm not. I swear I'm not. We're almost there.
You mean we is nearly at the Queen's Palace? Cried the BFG.
It's just across the road, Sophie whispered. This is where I take over.
Which way?
The BFG asked. Straight ahead. The BFG trotted forward through the deserted park. Now stop. The BFG stopped. You see that huge roundabout ahead of us just outside the park? Sophie whispered.
I see it.
That's Hyde Park Corner. Even now, when it was still an hour before dawn, there was quite a lot of traffic moving around Hyde Park Corner. Then Sophie whispered, In the middle of the roundabout there is an enormous stone arch with a statue of a horse and rider on top of it. Can you see that? The BFG peered through the trees.
I is seeing it, he said.
Do you think that if you took a very fast run at it, you could jump clear over Hyde Park Corner, over the arch and over the horse and rider and land on the pavement on the other side?
Easy,
the BFG said. You're sure? You're absolutely sure?
I promise,
the BFG said. Whatever you do, you mustn't land in the middle of Hyde Park Corner.
Don't get flussed, the BFG said. To me that is a snitchy little jump. There is not a thing-a-ling-a-ling to it.
Then go, Sophie whispered. The BFG broke into a full gallop. He went scorching across the park, and just before he reached the railings that divided it from the street, he took off. It was a gigantic leap. He flew high over Hyde Park Corner and landed as softly as a cat on the pavement the other side. Well done, Sophie whispered. Now quick, over that wall. Directly in front of them, bordering the pavement, there was a brick wall with fearsome-looking spikes all along the top of it. A swift crouch, a little leap, and the BFG was over it. We're there, Sophie whispered excitedly. We're in the Queen's backyard. The palace.
By Grumdrops,
whispered the big friendly giant.
Is this really it?
There's the palace, Sophie whispered back. Not more than 100 yards away, through the tall trees in the garden, across the mown lawns and the tidy flower beds, the massive shape of the palace itself loomed through the darkness. It was made of whitish stone. The sheer size of it staggered the BFG. But this place is having
100 bedrooms at least, he said.
Easily, I should think, Sophie whispered.
Then I is boggled, the BFG said. How is I possibly finding the one where the Queen is sleeping?
Let's go a bit closer and have a look, Sophie whispered. The BFG glided forward among the trees. Suddenly he stopped dead. The great ear in which Sophie was sitting began to swivel around. Hey, Sophie whispered, you're going to tip me out. Shh, the BFG whispered back.
I is hearing something.
He stopped behind a clump of bushes. He waited. The ear was still swinging this way and that. Sophie had to hang on tight to the side of it to save herself from tumbling out. The BFG pointed through a gap in the bushes, and there, not more than 50 yards away, she saw a man padding softly across the lawn. He had a guard dog with him on a leash. The BFG stayed as still as stone. So did Sophie. The man and the dog walked on and disappeared into the darkness.
You was telling me they has no soldiers in the back garden, the BFG whispered.
He wasn't a soldier, Sophie whispered. He was some sort of watchman. We'll have to be careful.
I is not too worried, the BFG said. These waxy big ears of mine is picking up even the noise of a man breathing on the other side of this garden.
How much longer before it begins to get light? Sophie whispered.
Very short, the BFG said. We must go pell-mell for leather now.
He glided forward through the vast garden, and once again Sophie noticed how he seemed to melt into the shadows wherever he went. His feet made no sound at all, even when he was walking on gravel. Suddenly, they were right up close against the back wall of the great palace. The BFG's head was level with the upper windows 1 flight up, and Sophie, sitting in his ear, had the same view. In all the windows on that floor, the curtains seemed to be drawn. There were no lights showing anywhere. In the distance, they could hear the muted sound of traffic going round Hyde Park Corner. The BFG stopped and put his other ear, the one Sophie wasn't sitting in, close to the first window.
No,
he whispered. What are you listening for? Sophie whispered back.
For breathing, the BFG whispered. I is able to tell if it is a man being or a lady by the breathing voice. We has a man in there, snorting a little bit too.
He glided on, flattening his tall, thin, black-cloaked body against the side of the building. He came to the next window. He listened.
No,
he whispered. He moved on.
This room is empty, he whispered.
He listened in at several more windows, but at each one he shook his head and moved on. When he came to the window in the very center of the palace, he listened but did not move on.
"Ho, ho," he whispered. "We has a lady sleeping in there."
Sophie felt a little quiver go running down her spine. "But who?" she whispered back. The BFG put a finger to his lips for silence. He reached up through the open window and parted the curtains ever so slightly. The orange glow from the night sky over London crept into the room and cast a glimmer of light onto its walls. It was a large room, a lovely room, a rich carpet, gilded chairs, a dressing table, a bed, and on the pillow of the bed lay the head of a sleeping woman. Sophie suddenly found herself looking at a face she had seen on stamps and coins and in the newspapers all her life. For a few seconds, she was speechless.
"Is that her?"
the BFG whispered. "Yes," Sophie whispered back. The BFG wasted no time. First, and very carefully, he started to raise the lower half of the large window. The BFG was an expert on windows. He had opened thousands of them over the years to blow his dreams into children's bedrooms. Some windows got stuck, some were wobbly, some creaked. He was pleased to find that the Queen's window slid upward like silk. He pushed up the lower half as far as it would go so as to leave a place on the sill for Sophie to sit. Next, he closed the crack in the curtains. Then, with finger and thumb, he lifted Sophie out of his ear and placed her on the window ledge with her legs dangling just inside the room, but behind the curtains.
"Now don't you go tip-toppling backwards," the BFG whispered. "You must always be holding on tight with both hands to the inside of the windowsill."
Sophie did as he said. It was summertime in London, and the night was not cold. But don't forget that Sophie was wearing only her thin nightie. She would have given anything for a dressing gown, not just to keep her warm, but to hide the whiteness of her nightie from watchful eyes in the garden below. The BFG was taking the glass jar from the pocket of his cloak. He unscrewed the lid. Now, very cautiously, he poured the precious dream into the wide end of his trumpet. He steered the trumpet through the curtains, far into the room, aiming it at the place where he knew the bed to be. He took a deep breath. He puffed out his cheeks, and poof, he blew. Now he was withdrawing the trumpet, sliding it out very, very carefully like a thermometer.
"Is you all right sitting here?" she whispered.
"Yes," Sophie murmured. She was quite terrified, but determined not to show it. She looked down over her shoulder. The ground seemed miles away. It was a nasty drop. "How long will the dream take to work?" Sophie whispered.
"Some takes an hour," the BFG whispered back. "Some is quicker, some is slower still, but it is sure to find her in the end."
Sophie said nothing.
"I is going off to wait in the garden," the BFG whispered. "When you is wanting me, just call out my name and I is coming very quick."
"Will you hear me?" Sophie whispered.
"You is forgetting these," the BFG whispered,
smiling and pointing to his great ears. "Goodbye," Sophie whispered. Suddenly, unexpectedly, the BFG leaned forward and kissed her gently on the cheek. Sophie felt like crying. When she turned to look at him, he was already gone. He had simply melted away into the garden. Well, that leaves us at a bit of a cliffhanger. Well, I really hope you guys are enjoying the story so far. 150,000. You guys are awesome. All right, Suzanne, you go back to work and we'll see you again. I appreciate you being here. Dun, dun, dun. So I got to have a soundboard so I can like play, those types of sound. It would be funny. But anyway, I appreciate you too. So that's where I'll leave our stories tonight. Sophie's plan put in place, and waiting for the Queen to wake up. We will make 200,000. Absolutely. Now, I'm going to finish this on Wednesday night, foregoing our normal schedule of horror and science fiction stories, but we'll be back at that on Friday. So, yeah. I really appreciate you guys all hanging out with me tonight for a couple of hours by the fire. If you enjoy these stories and want to support what I do here, I don't know if I will. I just gotta. It's got to be one of those things where I can plan it ahead of time, but I really haven't. I really haven't spent a whole lot of time. I've been stupid busy for the 8 p.m. I haven't really had time to sit down. So, but yeah, if you want to support what I do here, go off to the UndeadPapa Mercantile. The link is in my bio, and you can get official UndeadPapa merch, and also you can consider subscribing and becoming a super fan, like 8 people already have. But I really appreciate that because it helps keep the campfire lit. So I am going to call it a night, and Jim Jam Jammies. I'll have to look. I might be able to be convinced to do that. But yeah. Well, until Wednesday, please be kind to each other. And be kind to yourself, because kindness matters. And so do you. Good night, everybody. See you Wednesday. And good night over on the tubes. I appreciate you guys being here. Yeah, you guys are just as valuable to me as over on TikTok. So I will see you again on Wednesday night, where we will finish